They say time heals everything, but they never tell you what to do when the wounds are carved by the people you trusted most. For years, I believed my father's death was an accident, a tragic story buried under corporate lies, until one encrypted file changed everything. It led me back to Zurich, to the same city where my family built their empire, and where it all began to fall apart. Every truth I uncovered cut deeper than the last. Every person I loved had something to hide. And when I finally reached the end, I realized revenge wasn't what I wanted. I wanted peace. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about how far one man will go to find the truth, even if it destroys everything he thought he knew. You're watching Intiqara Stories, where every ending begins with the truth. They say time heals everything. But when I stood outside that mansion again, 12 winters later, I realized time doesn't heal. It hides. The snow was falling slow, like the universe was holding its breath. The house stood there in silence, the same red bricks, the same frozen garden where we used to build snowmen. But to me, it wasn't home anymore. It was a monument of everything I lost. I left this place when I was 19. Back then, I thought walking away would set me free. Instead, it turned into a wound that never closed. When my father died, his will split our family apart. Overnight, I became the enemy, the son who manipulated his father, the liar who forged papers, the greedy boy who couldn't accept the truth. But none of it was true. They just needed someone to blame, and I was easy. I still remember the night it happened. My brother Aaron slammed my bedroom door open. His face was red, his hands shaking. "You think you deserve everything, don't you?" he yelled. And before I could even speak, he threw a photo frame at me, our family portrait. Glass shattered across the floor, and with it, so did our bond. That was the last time I saw him. Now, 12 years later, I was back. Not because I wanted forgiveness, not even because I missed them. I came back because of a letter. A letter sent from an unknown address, just a few days before Christmas. The handwriting looked familiar. My mother's. It said, "Ethan, it's time you came home. There's something you need to know before Christmas Eve." I read that line over and over for days, wondering what something meant. And every version of it I imagined felt worse than the last. So here I was, suitcase in one hand, guilt in the other, standing at the gate I once ran from. When I finally gathered the courage to knock on the door, it opened before I could touch it. And there she was, my mother. Her hair was grayer, her shoulders smaller, but her eyes, those same sharp blue eyes, still held the same mix of love and fear. "Ethan," she whispered. Her voice cracked on my name like it hurt to say it. For a second, I didn't know what to do. Do I hug her? Do I walk past her like a stranger? So I just said the only thing that came to mind. "Hi, Mom." That's when I saw Aaron, standing at the end of the hallway. He didn't move, didn't smile, just stood there, arms crossed, like a guard protecting a secret. Dinner that night felt like eating inside a dream. The same table, the same old dishes, even the same crack in the window frame where I used to sneak glances at the stars. But it wasn't the same home. Every word was polite. Every glance was a war. At one point, Mom reached for her glass and her hand trembled. Her fork clinked against the plate, And in that soft, broken silence, she said something that froze me completely. "Ethan, before your father died, he wrote you a letter." The room went still. Even Aaron stopped breathing. I looked at her. "A letter?" She nodded, sliding an old, yellowed envelope across the table. The wax seal was cracked, but still held the faint impression of my father's initials. I hadn't seen his handwriting since the day he died, and seeing it again felt like being punched in the chest. My fingers hesitated. Part of me didn't want to open it, because deep down, I knew whatever was inside would change everything I thought I knew about this family. And as I broke that seal, I realized coming home wasn't the ending of my story. It was just the beginning of a truth I was never meant to find. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should ever feel. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Aaron kept his gaze fixed on his plate, like he was afraid of what might spill out if he looked up. Finally, I took a breath and opened it. The wax cracked, and the scent of old tobacco drifted out, my father's smell. Inside was a single folded sheet, yellowed around the edges. His handwriting looped across the page, bold and deliberate. I started reading. "If you're holding this, Ethan, then something has gone wrong. I never intended for you to carry the blame for what happened. But there are truths in this house darker than greed or jealousy." I read that line 3 times. Truths darker than greed. What could that even mean? My father had always been the pillar, strict, proud, obsessed with reputation. When he died, I told myself he took his secrets to the grave. But now, here they were, breathing again through every word. The letter went on. "You'll hear things about me, about the company, about your brother. Don't believe everything they told you. There are decisions I made that I regret, and debts I couldn't repay." Debts. That word hung in the air like smoke. I looked up from the page. Mom's face had gone pale, her lips pressed tight. "A debt?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "It's nothing you need to worry about." But her voice cracked on nothing. Aaron stood up suddenly, chair scraping the floor. "This is ridiculous. He's twisting things even from the grave." Then he stormed out. The door slammed so hard the silverware rattled. For a moment, all I could hear was the old clock ticking. Mom reached out, her fingers trembling as they touched the letter. "There are things your father never explained," she whispered. I waited, but she didn't continue. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like a memory waking up. I wandered down the hall, into the old study, the room my father spent most of his life in. It smelled of dust and wood polish. The desk still had a half-burned cigar resting in a tray, frozen in time. I ran my hand across the drawers. The bottom one was locked, just like it used to be. I knelt and tried the key that hung from the bookshelf. It didn't fit. But as I tugged on the drawer, I noticed something taped beneath it. A small, thin envelope hidden flat against the wood. My pulse quickened. I peeled it off carefully. The handwriting on it wasn't my father's. It was Aaron's. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, realizing that whatever was inside had been hidden long before I ever left. Mom's footsteps echoed in the hallway. When she saw me standing there, letter in hand, her face went white. "Ethan," she said quietly, "please don't." There was fear in her eyes, Not the kind that comes from guilt, but from knowing something that could destroy everything. I deserve to know, I said. Her reply was barely a whisper. Some truths don't set you free, son. They break you. She turned and walked away, leaving me alone in that cold, silent room, the letter burning like fire between my fingers. I wanted to tear it open right then, but something in me said wait. Because sometimes the answer you want most is the one you can't survive. I put it in my coat pocket and sat by the window until the first light of dawn touched the snow outside. The world looked peaceful, untouched. But inside that house, peace had never existed. And as the sun rose over that frozen mansion, I knew one thing. Before this Christmas was over, someone's truth would bury the rest of us. Morning light spilled through the tall windows, sharp and cold, cutting through the dust that hung in the air. I sat there, still holding Aaron's envelope. My fingers had gone numb, but my mind was burning. The question wouldn't stop echoing. Why would my brother hide a letter in Dad's study? Aaron had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect lies. He knew how to charm everyone in a room. I used to admire him. Now I wasn't sure I even knew him. I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. Inside were a few folded documents and a single photo. The picture stopped my breath. It was taken years ago. Our family standing in front of the old lake house. But behind us, half hidden by the reflection in the window, was another face. A man I'd never seen before, standing in Dad's office, looking straight at the camera. And then I saw the handwriting on the back. He knows. Just 2 words, but they hit like a hammer. I unfolded the documents. They weren't letters. They were contracts, company agreements, property transfers, and one name repeated across them all. Aaron. Every file showed the same signature, my father's, but the dates didn't make sense. One of them was signed after his death. I felt my chest tighten. My brother had forged them. I shoved everything back into the envelope and stood up, my pulse pounding in my ears. Mom was in the kitchen, pretending to read the newspaper, her coffee untouched. Why didn't you tell me Aaron took over the company before Dad died? I asked. She froze. Slowly, she lowered the paper. What are you talking about? I tossed the envelope on the table. The photo slid out, base up between us. Her eyes widened. I found this in Dad's study, I said. Her voice trembled. You weren't supposed to see that. That sentence, you weren't supposed to see that, confirmed everything. My throat went dry. So it's true. She shook her head, tears forming. You don't understand. Your father was trying to protect you. Aaron, he made choices that... Before she could finish, the front door slammed. Heavy footsteps followed. Aaron appeared in the doorway, his jaw tight, eyes dark. Going through my things now, little brother? He said quietly. The calm in his tone scared me more than anger ever could. Mom steps between us. Stop this, both of you. But Aaron's stare never left me. You have no idea what you've started. He grabbed the envelope, but I didn't let go. The paper tore between us, half in his hand, half in mine. You forged Dad's signature, I said through clenched teeth. He smirked. You think you know everything because of a few papers.
You've always been naive, Ethan, always chasing ghosts. He turned and walked away, leaving the torn envelope fluttering to the floor. Mom collapsed into the nearest chair, face buried in her hands. I just stood there, shaking, the pieces of paper trembling in my grip. That night, I searched the study again, desperate for answers. I found an old cassette recorder tucked behind the books, the kind Dad used for dictations. The label read, December 19th, personal. I pressed play. Static hissed, then his voice filled the room. Calm, measured, but strained. If you're hearing this, it means Aaron has crossed the line. He wasn't supposed to know about the Zurich account, or what's hidden there. I need to... Then it cut off. Just static. I rewound. Tried again. Same thing. The recording ended abruptly, mid-sentence. But one thing was clear. My father had been hiding something overseas. Something tied to Aaron. As I sat there in the dark, listening to the static hum, I realized this wasn't about money anymore. It was about betrayal. And maybe murder. That night, as the tape clicked to silence, I made myself a promise. Whatever my brother buried, I was going to dig up, even if it buried me with it.
I didn't sleep that night. The cassette recorder sat on my desk, its red light still blinking, like it was waiting for me to hit play one more time, as if maybe this time I'd hear the ending that was missing. But there was nothing, just silence. I spent hours replaying my father's words in my head. Aaron wasn't supposed to know about the Zurich account. That one line changed everything. Zurich, Switzerland, the one place Dad always said he'd never invest in because too many secrets hide in clean banks. Yet somehow, that's exactly where the truth was waiting. By morning, I had already made up my mind. If the answers were there, I was going to find them. I packed a small bag, grabbed the torn envelope pieces, and called the only person I could still trust, Nora. She'd been my dad's assistant for nearly 15 years, smart, loyal, and the only one who ever told me the truth when the rest of the world lied. She picked up on the second ring. Ethan, it's been a long time. Her voice was cautious. I need to see you, I said. It's about Dad. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, You found the tape, didn't you? I froze. How do... She interrupted. I warned him not to record that. Meet me at the old pier, noon. The line went dead. The pier hadn't changed. The same rusted boats, the same smell of salt and gasoline. Nora stood near the edge, her coat pulled tight against the wind. She looked older, tired, like the years had finally caught up. You look just like him, she said, when I approached. That same stubborn fire. I pulled the envelope from my pocket. What was he talking about? The Zurich account. Her eyes darted around, scanning for anyone nearby. Then she handed me a folded document, the corners yellowed. Your father transferred everything into an offshore trust 6 months before he died. He wanted to protect something, or someone. I unfolded it. The trust was in my name. My stomach dropped. In my name? Nora nodded. He didn't trust Aaron anymore. He said he saw something he couldn't unsee. What did Aaron do? I asked. She hesitated, then whispered. Your father found out Aaron was laundering company money through shell accounts, using fake signatures.
He planned to confront him, but before he could, the accident happened. The wind cut colder. I swallowed hard. You think Dad's death wasn't an accident? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't think, Ethan. I know. She opened her bag and pulled out a photograph, a blurred image of a car on a mountain road. Your father's brakes didn't fail. They were cut. The world tilted for a second. I felt the air leave my lungs. Who else knows this? I asked. Only you and me. And now, if Aaron suspects you found that tape, you're next. I stared out over the water, my reflection trembling in the waves. My whole life, I'd been told to forgive, to keep peace, to stay quiet. But now I understood silence was the reason my father was dead. I looked back at her. If Dad hid something in Zurich, how do I access it? She reached into her coat and handed me a small brass key engraved with the number 317. It's a safety box. Bahnhofstrasse 12, Zurich. The key opens it, but be careful. Your father told me that whatever's inside, it could ruin people. Before I could ask more, she turned and walked away, disappearing down the pier. I stood there for a long time, the key burning in my palm. Behind me, the wind carried a sound. Maybe footsteps, maybe just my imagination, but I knew someone was watching. When I turned around, the pier was empty, except for a single envelope lying on the bench where I'd parked my car. My name was written on it, in Aaron's handwriting. Inside was a single line. Don't go to Zurich, brother. You won't come back. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about our father's death anymore. This was war between brothers, and only one of us would make it out alive.
The warning note from Aaron felt like a spark thrown into gasoline. Don't go to Zurich, brother. You won't come back. For hours, I just stared at it, wondering if he meant it as a threat or a promise. But I knew one thing. If he wanted me to stay away, that meant there was something there worth finding. I booked a one-way ticket under a different name. Cash, no paper trail. The next morning, before the sun rose, I left home without saying a word to Mom. As the cab rolled past the iron gates of our estate, the house looked smaller, like it was already shrinking into memory. At the airport, every sound was sharper than usual. The whir of luggage belts, the PA announcements echoing like ghosts. I caught my reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, 3-day beard, a face I barely recognized. On the plane, I sat by the window and watched the clouds swallow the world below. For a few hours, it felt peaceful, almost like I could pretend none of it was real. But the moment I closed my eyes, my father's voice from that tape came back. He wasn't supposed to know about the Zurich account. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into something far bigger than family secrets. Halfway through the flight, a flight attendant handed me a folded napkin. "There's a message for you, sir." My heart skipped. I opened it. In small block letters, someone had written, "They're waiting when you land." I looked up, but the attendant was already gone. Across the aisle, a man in a gray suit was pretending to sleep, except his shoes were pointed toward me, not the aisle. I turned my face to the window, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Every instinct told me to get off that plane. But Zurich was the only road left that might lead to truth or closure. When we landed, I waited until almost everyone had disembarked before I stood. The man in gray was gone. Outside the terminal, cold alpine air cut through my coat. The city was clean, quiet, and unnervingly precise. Even the traffic lights changed like clockwork. I called a cab and handed the driver a piece of paper with one line.
Bahnhofstrasse 12. He glanced at it, then at me in the mirror. You sure about that address? He asked in accented English. Yeah, I said. He didn't reply, just nodded and started the engine. We drove in silence through narrow streets until the cab stopped in front of a tall, glass-fronted bank that looked too modern to hold secrets. I paid the fare, stepped out, and felt the city hum around me, efficient, detached, watching. Inside, a receptionist greeted me with the practiced smile of someone who'd seen every kind of client. I need access to a safe deposit box, I said, sliding the brass key across the counter. She examined it, typed something into her computer, then frowned. One moment, please. She disappeared through a side door. Minutes ticked by. Then two men in dark suits appeared, not security guards, the kind of men who carry authority without uniforms. Mr. I cut him off. Just Ethan. He gestured for me to follow. We took an elevator down, deep, too deep. When the doors opened, we stepped into a corridor lined with vaults. Box 317, he said. I inserted the key. It turned smoothly, like it had been waiting for me. Inside was a black folder sealed with red wax. I broke it open. There were photos, dozens. My father with business partners I didn't recognize, documents with signatures from politicians, investors, and Aaron. And at the bottom, a USB drive taped to a handwritten note. If you're reading this, it means I failed. Trust no one in the family, especially not her. Her. My mind went blank. Did he mean mom? Before I could think, the lights flickered. One of the men at the door spoke into his earpiece, then turned sharply toward me. Sir, we need to go. Now. Why? I asked. He hesitated, then said, because someone else just tried to access this box under your name. My chest went cold. Only two people knew I was coming. Nora and Aaron. In that underground vault, holding my father's final message, I realized the real enemy might not be my brother after all.
The elevator ride back to the surface felt like it lasted a lifetime. The USB drive burned in my pocket. My father's words repeated like an echo I couldn't shut off. Trust no one in the family, especially not her. Her. The pronoun hung in my mind like smoke. Mom? Nora? Someone else entirely. When the elevator doors opened, the two men who had escorted me were gone. Just gone. The hallway outside the vault was empty except for the faint smell of cologne. Expensive, sharp, familiar. Aaron's cologne. My pulse kicked up. I ran through the lobby scanning every corner, but there was no sign of him. Just the quiet hum of Zurich's perfect normalcy. People sipping coffee, traffic flowing, no one realizing the ground beneath their city was layered with secrets. I ducked to a nearby cafe, ordered an espresso, and pulled out my laptop. The USB fit perfectly. The screen blinked to life and then froze. A password prompt appeared. Enter praise. I tried my birthday, Dad's, even the company's founding year. Nothing. Then I noticed something carved faintly on the metal of the USB itself. Solemn promise. My heart stopped. That was what Dad always said before big family dinners. We eat together under a solemn promise. Loyalty first. I typed it in. The drive unlocked. Dozens of files appeared. Financial statements, offshore transfers, and a folder labeled Personal M. I clicked it open. A video file loaded. The timestamp read 3 days before his death. Dad sat in his study, looking tired but alert. He said, "Ethan, If you ever see this, it means things went further than I planned. Your mother, she's not who you think she is." My throat tightened. He continued, voice low. "She was never supposed to know about the Zurich account, but she found out. I confronted her. She said she did it for you, to protect your future. But I think she's protecting someone else." He looked off camera, whispering something I couldn't catch. Then he leaned closer. "If she tells you I was sick, don't believe her. It wasn't an illness that killed me. It was betrayal." The video ended. For a long time, I couldn't move. The cafe sounds around me blurred into white noise. Mom, the woman who'd held our family together, who'd begged us not to fight, she'd known. I left the cafe in a daze, clutching the laptop like it was the last piece of reality I had left. Outside, the air had shifted, colder, sharper. Zurich's postcard beauty suddenly looked staged, like a set built to hide a crime. I headed back toward my hotel, but halfway down the block, a black Mercedes pulled up beside me. The tinted window rolled down just enough for me to see a woman's silhouette. "Get in, Ethan," a voice said softly. It was Mom. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I said, "What are you doing here?" She smiled faintly. "Saving you from making a very big mistake." I hesitated, but something in her tone, calm, practiced, told me not to argue. I slid into the car. Inside, she looked immaculate. Perfectly pressed coat, diamond earrings, not a trace of travel fatigue. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. "You knew about Zurich," I replied. Her eyes flicked toward me, then back to the road. "Of course I did. I helped my father build it." The words hit like a slap. "You helped him?" She nodded. "We had plans, Ethan, but your father lost his nerve. He wanted to cut your brother out, dissolve the accounts. That would have destroyed everything." I stared at her. "So you let him die?" She didn't answer. The silence was louder than any confession. The car turned sharply into a narrow street, then into an underground garage. Mom parked, turned off the engine, and finally looked at me. Really looked at me. "You're my son. I would never hurt you," she said softly. "But there are things you'll never understand about what it takes to protect this family." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and smiled. "It's time," she said. "He's here." Before I could ask who, the passenger door opened, and Aaron climbed in. He looked at me, calm, almost pitying. He said, "Welcome to Zurich, little brother. You were never supposed to find out." And in that cold underground garage, sitting between the two people I trusted most, I realized I wasn't a son anymore. I was collateral. The moment Aaron shut the door, the sound of it echoed like a final verdict. The air in that underground garage was thick, too quiet, too clean, the kind of silence that only exists before something irreversible happens. Mom sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the dashboard. Aaron leaned back, calm as ever, like we were about to discuss weekend plans instead of the death of our father. "So," he said finally, "you've seen the files." I didn't answer. He smiled. "Then you understand why we can't let you leave Zurich." My voice came out low. "You killed him?" He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You really think it was that simple?" His eyes darted toward Mom. She didn't flinch. Something inside me broke. "All those years you pretended we were a family, you let me mourn him while you buried the truth.
Mom turned to me, her tone almost gentle. Ethan, listen to me. Your father wasn't innocent. He made mistakes, dangerous ones. The Zurich account was never just about money. It was leverage, insurance. Insurance against what? I asked. Against us, Aaron said. The words landed like a slap. Mom reached for my hand. He planned to expose everything, the shell companies, the political ties, the fund transfers, everything that built our legacy. If he had, we'd have lost everything, you included. I pulled my hand back. So you killed him to keep the legacy? She didn't answer. Aaron sighed, almost impatient. Dad was going to ruin decades of work over guilt. You always worshipped him, Ethan, but he wasn't the saint you think he was. He played dirty. He just didn't want to pay the price. I looked at them, my mother and brother, and realized I wasn't looking at family anymore. I was looking at business partners in a crime. Mom leaned closer. You're the only one who can make this right. The trust is in your name. You can move the Zurich assets quietly, dissolve the trail, and we all walk away free. And if I say no? Aaron's smile didn't reach his eyes. You were always sentimental, he said quietly. Dad would have been proud, right before you disappointed him again. I moved before I could think, shoved the car door open and ran. Footsteps followed instantly, Aaron's heavy and fast. I darted between parked cars, breath sharp in the cold air, the echo of my shoes slapping concrete. The exit gate ahead began to close. Someone had hit the security switch. I slid underneath just as it clanged shut behind me, sparks flying where metal met concrete. Outside, Zurich's night air hit my lungs like ice. I kept running, through alleys, past the river, until my legs burned. When I finally stopped, I was standing beneath the shadow of an old church. Snow had begun to fall, soft, quiet, almost holy. I pulled the USB from my pocket and stared at it. Inside that tiny piece of metal was the truth, my father's revenge, my family's destruction, and my only way out. But I wasn't safe yet. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. A woman's voice whispered, If you want to live, meet me at Stadelhofen station in 30 minutes. Bring the drive. Before I could speak, the line went dead. I stood there, heart pounding, staring into the falling snow. Whoever she was, she knew about the drive, and somehow she knew where I was. As the church bells rang midnight, I realized the game had changed. The secrets weren't just mine to uncover anymore. They were hunting me now.
Snow drifted across the empty streets as I made my way toward the station. Zurich at night looked almost unreal, clean, silent, like a photograph that someone had drained the warmth from. Every step echoed off the cobblestones, each one carrying the same thought. Who was she? The call had lasted less than 10 seconds, but her tone had stuck in my head. Calm, sure, and scared underneath. People who knew that kind of fear didn't make prank calls. By the time I reached the train platforms, the clock above read 12:27 a.m. The last train had long since gone. Only the hum of the vending machines and the flicker of fluorescent lights kept the station alive. I waited. 5 minutes, 10, nothing. Then, from across the tracks, I saw movement. A figure in a long gray coat, hood pulled low. She stepped into the light, and for a second,
I forgot how to breathe. It was Nora. She looked older than when I'd seen her at the pier, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. "You shouldn't have come here," I said. She shook her head. "I didn't have a choice." Her voice was hoarse. "They know you have the drive. They'll kill you for it." I took a step closer. "Who's they?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Your mother isn't working alone. There are people behind her. Investors who used your father's company as a front. Political money, defense contracts. He tried to expose it, and that's why he died." My stomach turned. "You knew?" "I tried to warn him, but by the time I realized how deep it went, it was too late." The wind carried snow between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, I pulled the USB from my pocket. "This is what they want?" Nora's eyes flicked to it. "That's not just data, Ethan. It's evidence. Names. Transactions. If it ever goes public, entire governments fall." I swallowed hard. "And you're telling me this now?" "Because you still have one thing they don't. Your father's passcode. Without it, the files are useless." "How do you know I have it?" She smiled faintly. "Because he told me. You've already said it once. You just don't realize where." Before I could ask what she meant, headlights flashed at the far end of the platform. A black SUV rolled to a stop. Nora's face drained of color. "They found us." She grabbed my arm. "Run." We sprinted down the platform, boots pounding against concrete. Behind us, doors slammed and voices shouted in German. Gunfire cracked the air, the sound sharp, unnatural against the winter stillness. We dove behind a maintenance shed. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Nora was breathing hard, clutching her side. "They won't stop. You have to go now. Take the east exit. There's a safe house near the river." "What about you?" She pressed something into my hand. A small, folded note. "Find the man named Keller. He was your father's lawyer in Zurich. He'll know what to do." Then she pushed me toward the stairwell. "Go." I hesitated only a second before running. By the time I reached the street, sirens were echoing in the distance. I turned back once, just long enough to see the SUV pull away and Nora lying still on the platform, snow already covering her like a blanket. For a moment, everything went silent again. Zurich's perfect stillness returned, but it felt poisoned now. Too clean, too quiet, like it was trying to hide the blood underneath. I unfolded the note she'd given me. 3 words, written in her hurried scrawl. "Solemn Promise, Part 2. My breath caught. That phrase, again, solemn promise, the same one that had unlocked the drive. But now, Part 2? The drive wasn't the full truth. It was only half of it. And the rest, whatever my father had hidden, was still out there, waiting for me to find it. As the snow buried the only person who'd tried to save me, I realized my father's final secret wasn't about money at all. It was about who I really was. I always thought revenge would feel like victory. That the moment you uncover the truth, the moment you bring the villains to light, something inside you would finally rest. But it doesn't. It burns slower than hate, quieter than grief. And when it's done, you're left staring at the ashes, wondering who you became while you were chasing ghosts. It's been 3 months since Zurich. The note Nora left led me to Keller, my father's old lawyer. He was hiding in the mountains near Schur, in a cabin that smelled of pine and old smoke. When I found him, he didn't seem surprised. He just looked at me and said, "So the boy kept his promise." Keller was old, sharp eyes, trembling hands. He poured me coffee and slid an envelope across the table. "This," he said, "is the part your father couldn't trust anyone with, not even Nora." Inside was a small metal key and a photograph, my father standing with a young man I'd never seen before. On the back, in my father's handwriting, were the words, "He is my greatest mistake and my only redemption." I turned to Keller. "Who is he?" Keller sighed. "Your brother." The words hit me harder than any bullet. "My what?" "Your father had another son," he said quietly, "before he met your mother. When he discovered what she was doing, laundering political money through his company, he tried to protect you both. But your mother found out about the other child, and that was when everything began to unravel." I felt the air leave my lungs. All the memories, the lies, the whispers, the secret meetings, they all started to make sense. My father hadn't just been hiding evidence. He'd been trying to protect us from each other. Keller leaned forward. "Your father believed one thing, that only you could stop what he started. But revenge wasn't the endgame, Ethan. The endgame was truth." That night, I drove to the storage unit the key opened. Inside was a single hard drive, identical to the first. When I plugged it in, my father's voice played through the speakers, a recording. "If you're hearing this, it means I failed, but maybe that's how it was meant to be. I built an empire on loyalty and lost it to greed. If you want to destroy what your mother created, you can. But if you want to free yourself, forgive her. That's the only revenge that lasts." The screen went dark. For the first time in years, I cried. Not from anger, but from the unbearable weight of understanding. I thought I wanted justice, but what I really wanted was closure. The next morning, I made my choice. I sent both drives to an investigative journalist, anonymously. Let the world deal with their truth. I was done living in its shadow. I left Zurich, sold the company, donated what was left of the fortune to a foundation under my father's name, the Solemn Promise Fund. It wasn't about redemption, it was about peace. Sometimes I walk by the pier where it all started. The water looks calm now, the city quiet again. People rush past, unaware of the stories buried beneath the cobblestones. But I know. I still hear Nora's voice sometimes, that soft urgency from the call that night. "Don't open that file." She wasn't warning me to stay away. She was telling me to wait until I was ready, until I could face the truth without letting it destroy me. And maybe that's what my father meant by a solemn promise. Not revenge, not silence, but the courage to face the past and still choose to live. In the end, my father's secret didn't ruin me. It freed me, because sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing their game. Every scar hides a story. Revenge ends. Truth remains. You've been watching Intiqara Stories, where every story reveals a truth, and every truth leaves a mark. If you felt this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And hit the bell icon so you're the first to watch and read every new story we share. Because here at Intiqara Stories, every ending is just the beginning of the next one.